Fox. But now only with AI can you go into these giant things and then map it, and then just click in one mapping we aired last week that went super viral, 55,000 of the NGOs and who's funding it, including U.S. aid. So to him, I'd say, well, 35,000 foot view, what is the worst? As we know, U.S. aid isn't even it. But it was the most arrogant. Just said, you're not looking, we're not telling you. They're like, the hell we aren't. They've been stonewalling Congress for decades. So I get they went after it first, as Elon said, because they just said, no, you're not allowed in the offices, and we won't tell you anything. And Senator Paul, for years, they won't give him anything. No one. They just say, screw you. So it is wild arrogance. So we'll look at that some, and he's got some new models and new breakdowns that are just spectacular. So I'm going to try to give him the floor here, but his work on election fraud has been very instrumental, but in stopping a lot of it and mitigating it and creating a blueprint for Trump's investigators to go in and block a lot of it. But that now is being eclipsed by his work on the fraud in the NGOs and up the chain to the State Department and the rest of it. So, Peter Bernegger, thank you so much for coming on with us today. This is a complex but critical issue, central to retaking our republic. How should we start with the audience who is smart, but still this gets into rocket science level stuff? How do you quantify what's going on and then start drilling into it?
Well, first, thank you, Alex, for having me on. And it's not just me. There's a team of us across the United States that have been volunteering our time and a lot of times our own money to do deep dives into this. And of course, we're called conspiracy theorists, especially in 2020, 2021. We exposed the election fraud. We know how the presidential election was stolen in 2020. Then we moved into the money phase with Chris Gleason and Philip Allison, two of the team members who did a lot of the work, 7 days a week, 14-hour days, exposing smurfing, which is campaign money laundering. Then we got into the NGOs, and we've termed it the fifth branch of government, whereby that's the real government that's running in all these anomalies, the things that don't feel right and obviously just aren't right, like DEI, CRT, transgender operations on minors or anybody, illegal immigration. Well, it's all the fifth branch of government, which is NGOs. NGOs are non-governmental organizations. Generally, you can refer to them as nonprofits, even though there's upwards to 40 different types of nonprofits sanctioned by the IRS. And we found is that there's 1.4 or 1.5 million NGOs in the United States alone, not even getting to the international ones. And we've identified 55,000 out of the 1.5 million that are true liberal NGOs trying to tear down our country. And one of them, as we give an example, is the Chinese Progressive Association that has shown it's out of Oakland, California. The FBI has tagged them as a bad actor. And they are getting either giving or receiving federal government money, federal grants, and then it goes from one organization to another. And people across the United States and citizen journalists have exposed this. Rand Paul, the U.S. Senator, has exposed this, but certainly not enough.
And so on screen is just this group funding and the big banks and big tech above them and government giving them just billions. This is just one of their front groups or one of their conduits they use. And let me just briefly go back then here. Let's remember, meanwhile, Loris Lerner under Obama, they admitted, yeah, we targeted tens of thousands of churches and conservative pro-gun groups, anti-abortion groups, taking away their tax exemption, auditing them, putting them in prison. So while you have a war on legitimate, open, Christian, conservative, nationalist groups, then they've got just green light over here, USAID, 93% of the money going to Democrats. I mean, it's just, this is their fifth column. This is their shadow government. This is striking at the heart. Please continue.
And the Chinese Progressive Group is in the 55,000 along with USAID. And let me highlight a few USAID. The USAID has been funding, which is our tax dollars through government grants and loans, Project Predict, which is the creation of COVID. There's NGOs such as the Catholic Charity Scam and the Lutherans and the Jewish Family Services, 300 million a month to facilitate illegal immigration. USAID is funding the BBC. It came out this morning. They are funding the piggy bank. They're larger than the CIA by a multiple.
By the way, stop the presses. We're going to have you on for 10 hours soon. We'll do a 2-hour commercial free. I didn't even know that yet, but that goes to figure. The government funded, they have to pay a license to have a TV in the UK. Almost no one watches it. It's literally run by pedophiles. It's come out. And they are getting taxpayer money from the American people. Wow, so Americans are paying a BBC tax as well. Holy Toledo.
And they're paying, and the USAID and through NGOs is paying Reuters in London to do hit pieces on conservatives across the United States.
300 million to target Musk, which again, that's really MI6. Incredible.
And USAID is the one who funded the toppling of the overthrow of Ukraine government in the Orange Revolution in 2014, where Victoria Nuland is the one who orchestrated that, and she needs to be criminally prosecuted for that. You know, she's the one who started, and her minions started the Ukraine war. It wasn't Putin. We're the ones who are putting biolabs and other
by the way,
bad things in Ukraine.
Nuland and all of them have bragged they started it. George Soros went on CNN and said, I'm behind it. I did it through USAID. They're very proud about it.
And the USAID is the ones funding and paying poppy farmers in Afghanistan to this day. Maybe it stopped yesterday thanks to Elon Musk, but they were paying poppy farmers to grow the poppies for heroin. Wow. And then to ship it across to different countries. And they're paying for child trafficking, as I said. And Tom Homan of ICE was on, where there's 500,000 now kids, not 200,000 or 300,000, which is bad enough. 500,000 illegally trafficked kids, and the U.S. government, through the NGO, USAID, is paying for that. It's outrageous. Now it's come out, there's a partnership with USAID directly under contract with Mexican drug cartels. This is outrageous. And shame on all the congressmen and senators, where there's, what, 635 of them, maybe 2 or 3, like Rand Paul and a few others, maybe 2 or 3 out of the 635 have ever brought this to light. And where are all the other ones? Where are the 633 that have not spoken up and probably have their fingers in the pockets of these NGOs getting money?
Incredible. I mean, and we're just learning a little bit of it right now, and they are in full panic mode over Elon Musk.
And I tell you what, very interesting is what we found with when we were able to map out all the 55,000 connected. And when I say connected, the reason we could see the cash flow monies flowing from one to the next, sometimes through 10,000 NGOs. And then it'll actually come back to the original NGO. And this includes not just like the Chinese Progressive Association. I'm talking about Charles Schwab Trust Fund, Fidelity Trust, Vanguard Trust. You're talking about people who, on the brokerage side, you have your pension funds and your 401ks.
Of course, I mean, in general, that's the BlackRock Consortium.
Yeah, correct. And I am talking specifically about the trust, but they still are using their names like Charles Schwab, and they might be doing good work of 60, 70, 80%. But then you have that 10, 20, 30% that we can trace and show that goes directly to anti-American, outright communist organizations who are trying to tear down our country. It's outrageous how deep this is. I'm going to give you a quick example. We can track from the U.S. Treasury through grants and loans, going to the Tides Foundation, going to the Chinese Progressive Group, who then funds the Abundant Organization, the Organization Support Services Group, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, Fair Works, LBGT Outership, Armor Islamic Center, Islamic Services of Seattle, Working Washington, Vote Yes for Work. These are all funded by U.S. tax dollars through the NGO coming from the U.S. Treasury to the Tides Foundation to the Chinese Progressive Group, who then we can track and we can show on screen that funds 187 other NGOs. And then again, you'll see the money coming back. And this is something no one could ever do before. And we believe it's because they're trying to cover their tracks of where the money's really going to. And don't forget, this is only 55,000 in the United States. Think about all the NGOs then that go out of country.
And that's what Zelensky, as soon as Musk got into USAID this weekend, by Sunday, less than 24 hours later, Zelensky goes, look, I only got 42% of the money. Somebody keeps the rest in the U.S., 58%. And they're rolling over quickly. They know they're in trouble.
Exactly. And I'm going to give you another great direct example. I have to give credit to @Data Republicans. Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening. Now, you tell me what the hell that is. There's 48 federal grants totaling $528 million that anyone could go look up. This is based on the IRS 990s. We went to their database using an API, downloaded their entire IRS database of 990s. That's our source of our data for all this.
And what I love is how Musk is openly working with his people, but also crowdsourcing for people like you with the trails, with the breadcrumbs. And you see X particularly using a HUMET of human knowledge with researchers like you that go in and connect the dots and then furnish these total scientific breakdowns, blueprints for everyone of what to go after. This is synergy.
And I can disclose that President Trump has our information on how they stole the election in Wisconsin. He has our information of smurfing, of campaign money laundering, and he has our information of these NGOs. And he, to my knowledge, and seeing how he's acting, he's using it, which is praise the Lord.
I remember you, like a couple of years ago, your group, seeing it about smurfing and learning the term. I mean, I understood money laundering and Act Blue and how they did that. And they would just take people's names that weren't even involved in it and use them to make donations they weren't really making. But now, thanks to your work and others, this is really coming to the fore, and they've just committed mass crime. Like Act Blue, the majority of the money comes from overseas credit cards. I mean, they're not even trying to hide this.
And we're proud to say is that 20 state attorney generals have last year opened a criminal investigation, which is still ongoing. And Jason Morales, the state attorney general out of Virginia, and along with U.S. Congressman Brian Stiles, who happens to be from Wisconsin, he's the chairman of the committee that oversees the Federal Election Commission. They sent a request to Janet Yellen in the U.S. Treasury for the SARS reports. And she commented publicly, they have never seen so many SARS reports filed by banks against Act Blue ever in any request from Congress. And that those criminal investigations are still going, being led by people such as Ken Paxton out of Texas, the state attorney general out of Missouri and Indiana and Iowa.
And what's beautiful is this isn't like fake charges on Trump or me or Owen Schroyer or Steve Bannon. This is all meat and potatoes, cut and dry, prima facie, open and shut. I mean, we've got their ass.
Yes, because you can't cover up the financial data through the merchant services when they process the cards. That's in the hands of like Visa and MasterCard and the banks. So
and they've been operating like they would never have anybody go look or check. They thought they were invincible.
Exactly. Now, I wanted to finish on this consortium for elections and political process. It's 528 million in grants, but when you go back further in time, it reaches 2 billion. And you know who it's going to? This is supposed to be for educating young people, which the federal government should be doing in the first place, about the political process and getting involved in politics. But the money, when you look in the details of the individual connections, it goes to, and this is typically 13 to 14, 15 million per grant. It's going to Venezuela, Haiti, Armenia, Jordan, Nigeria, Tunisia, Republic of Congo, Sudan, Senegal, Moldavia, Guatemala. Why? Why is $528 million going to these countries?
And when you track it back, it's literal globalist brainwashing into the WFU and cult.
Exactly.
And drag queen story time, all of it.
Influence and you can track these NGOs to the ones who have been promoting pornography books in our public schools.
Of course. No, because I've
You can
tracked these
track them.
individually, spot checking
Exactly.
it. When you wonder why in Australia and Germany and even in Russia and Mexico and everywhere, why there's suddenly fat dudes in dresses, with a lot of them convicted pedophiles talking to 6-year-olds, it's literally grants. I mean, that's what they're paying for.
Yes, and then now it's also coming out, mostly, I'd say 90% Democrats they are getting a cut of this money. This is why Senator McConnell, not Mitch, well, Mitch McConnell is in on it also through Ukraine money laundering. We've determined that already. But the Democrats who are outside the USAID office in Washington, D.C. yesterday, trying to cause a ruckus, they are the ones who are getting more money, either directly in their
Yeah,
pockets.
let me back you up. Musk got the numbers, released it last night. 93% of it's going, 93% of the money going out that's being siphoned off goes to Democrats. So this is a Democrat operation.
Bingo, bingo. That's why they're screaming like stuck pigs, because their money supply is being cut off. But again, USA